All right. Are we ready to go, everyone? Okay. So I think we'll go ahead. We're going to kick off first with some instructions in Espanol for anybody who is non-English speaking, who's primarily Spanish speaking. And then we're going to kick it over to Zylene Rodriguez in my office, and then Felicia Pohl, and then we'll get going. So please, let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you. We are happy to be offering English-Spanish interpretation for this session with Congresswoman Stansbury. In one moment, when the setting is turned on, please click on the More icon or the globe in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen and choose your language of preference. Also, panelists, please be reminded to speak at a reasonable pace to help facilitate the interpretation and language access. Nos complace ofrecer interpretación inglés-español para este taller con la congresista Stansbury. Al hacer clic en el icono más o en el globo terráqueo de la barra de herramientas situada en la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, cuando la configuración esté activada, podrá seleccionar su idioma que prefiera. Además, se ruega a los ponentes que hablen a un ritmo razonable para facilitar la interpretación. Okay, great. I think we can turn the setting on now. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we'd like to turn it over now to Zylene Rodriguez, who is my DC staffer who works on all things immigration. Zylene, please.
Ok. Hola a todos. Soy Sailin, trabajo por la congresista haciendo inmigración en la oficina de DC. Hoy tenemos organizaciones de City of Albuquerque, Asian Family Center, New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, ACLU y el centro. Gracias a todos por venir aquí.
Thank you, Zylene. And for anyone in our office, anyone that may need support from our office, we have a whole team of people that do casework, that work with the community, who work on policy issues. And so Zylene does a lot of our work in DC on policy and also does many other things, education and things like that. But with now, I'd like to turn it over to Felicia Pohl, who is our digital director here in Albuquerque.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Just a few housekeeping stuff from me. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A portion of the Zoom. Our chat is disabled, and I will be going through and moderating all the questions, so that way our panelists know what questions are being asked. And so, Congresswoman, I'd like to kick it over to you.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Know Your Rights Town Hall. We're really grateful to have all of you joining us today. I'm here in Albuquerque right now, and we're joined by an incredible array of immigrant rights organizations that serve our communities here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, as well as the city of Albuquerque itself. And we want everyone out there, first and foremost, to know who is either an immigrant or a member of the immigrant community, to know that you are loved, you are cared for, we are fighting for you, you belong, this is your community, you are a New Mexican, and we are here for you. So we want you to know that, and that our office is always a resource. So if anything is happening for you, for your family, for someone you know, for a loved one, or even just somebody you hear of who's struggling, please know that you can contact our office, and we have caseworkers that can help support you, help connect you with resources in the community, and to help answer questions. So nobody in our community, nobody should ever live in fear. I know it's a very frightening time, but we want you to know that you have a support community here for you, both in Congress, at the level of the city, at the level of the state, and these amazing organizations that are here also to provide support for the community. Our primary focus today is to make sure that everyone who is in the community, whether you're an immigrant or not an immigrant, know your rights, because everybody has rights. This is America, and our fundamental freedoms are enshrined in the Constitution, in the law, And right now, obviously, so many of our rights are under attack. And so knowledge is power. We want you to have the power of knowing your rights, no matter what the circumstances are, whether it's something that might affect you personally or someone that you know, or if you're just somebody in the community. And we're going to make sure that this resource remains online for everyone as an ongoing resource. And like I said, you can always contact us. Today, the organizations that are joining us, as Eileen mentioned, are the City of Albuquerque, the Asian Family Center, the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, the ACLU of New Mexico, and El Centro here in Albuquerque, and of course, my office. And today we're going to cover what your rights are with respect to immigration in the workplace, what to do if you're approached or attempted to be taken in custody, and or if somebody comes to your home. We're going to keep this totally focused on the legal aspects of your rights and the things that you can do to help take care of yourself and your loved ones. And after our presentations, we'll make sure that there's time for question and answer to make sure that everyone's identities are protected, because we know this is an issue that many people are scared to ask questions about. And because we do want this to be a resource online, we're going to have moderation of questions, and then Felicia will ask them of the panelists. So we'll do our best to answer your questions, and we'll make sure that you know how you can submit them anonymously as we're going. So with that, I'm so proud and grateful to live in a city, my hometown, that has explicitly made the decision to protect our communities. And so I want to turn it over first to Beatriz Valencia, who is with the City of Albuquerque. And Beatriz, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury, for the invitation for you and your team to be part of this town hall. My position is the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Liaison at the City of Albuquerque. In this role, I'm able to have communication with the community organizations and the community in general. So I wanted to share what resources we have available for you at this moment in time. So for disclaimer, all the information that is provided is only informational purposes and not constitute legal advice. The land of Chapman, Albuquerque, New Mexico, we are a city of 600,000 people in Albuquerque, more or less. 10% of the population is immigrant and refugees. There are multiple resolutions in place, and one of those is immigrant-friendly city. Please just know that we have done this work for 10 years. For me, 4 years, but before that, there was a lot of work done. What we have done in our office, we want to improve the lives of immigrant and refugee affairs in the city of Albuquerque. What we want to do is to facilitate the successful integration of immigrants and refugees in Albuquerque. I'm an immigrant myself, so I understand where you're coming from. I'm talking very fast, probably because I just feel that there is such a need for this information at this moment in time. I know for a fact that that this is very needed. What is the future? Grow the Office of Immigrant and Refugee, continue on working with the steering committee. We work with many agencies, city agencies. We continue the work, and we have a call to action: volunteer, partner, donate, and just do many things with us. We have done some webinars that have been shared all around the city: immigration about your businesses, understanding rights and protections, who to call, safety, community, workforce, and faith and community. All this information you're gonna find it in our website. Just know that we know that this information was brought to us because you needed some answers, and then we share it now with the community. And please come to our website; you will be able to find it. Community outreach, a lot of community outreach we have done with different community organizations. The information, and we do it together with the community. And I'm very happy that having the opportunity to be here today with our Congresswoman to be able to share that these resources are available for you. Here is Know Your Rights. You can scan or go onto our website, cabq/OIRA. Please don't hesitate. all this information is going to be helpful. And we have a lot of more information with phone numbers, website for all our partner organizations. This is a one-stop site that you can find so many resources.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Beatriz. I think the primary takeaway from the city of Albuquerque is that there is already a lot of resources available online. So please visit the city of Albuquerque's website. But I also want to add on top of that, that last week I had an extensive conversation with the mayor, and the entire New Mexico delegation also meets regularly with the governor to discuss various issues. And we want you all to know that we're working very closely between the federal, state, and local level to make sure that we're coordinating on the protection and care of our communities so that we don't end up in a situation like we're seeing in other parts of the country. And so again, you know, there's no wrong door to come through, whether that's one of the organizations here, it's the city, our office, whatever way you find your path to information will help you get connected with the resources that you need. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sachi Wetase with the Asian Family Center, which does a tremendous amount of work with the AAPI community here in Albuquerque and statewide. And Sachi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I am very grateful to be here and to be able to share a little bit about what we do at the Asian Family Center. So like the Congresswoman said, my name is Sachi Watase, and I am the Executive Director of the New Mexico Asian Family Center. And I'll just give a brief overview about what we do and what resources are available for our communities. So we believe that we are stronger together as a community, and we provide culturally sensitive programs and services, creating a Pan-Asian community that advocates and supports itself. And so we primarily provide and aim for a thriving and connected communities across New Mexico and equitable access to the resources needed and to culturally and linguistically tailored care. So the populations that we serve primarily within the Asian, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian communities in New Mexico are victims of crime, survivors of gender-based violence, including sexual assault, domestic violence, stalking, etc., speakers of languages other than English, or also known as limited English proficient, low-income households, and immigrants and refugees. So this is our primary population. We serve across the state, although we are based in Albuquerque. And yeah, if you see API and H throughout this presentation, that stands for Asian, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian. So our work is, we have kind of three buckets of work. Of course, our community is at the center, but we provide direct social services. We do community engagement programming, and then we also work on policy and advocacy. So those are kind of our three areas, and we know that the community is at the center of all of those areas and is really the guide of how we plan and coordinate our services and community programming and the policy work that we do and the advocacy work that we do. So we really also like to work in this tight-knit network. So within our own organization, so people can enter at any point. They could come to one of our public community engagement activities and then learn about our direct social services, or maybe they come in for some services and then get connected to ongoing community programming. And then our advocacy and policy, like I said, is informed by what we learn from the community and the needs that arise through our direct services and our community engagement work. So our direct services that we offer, we provide wraparound case management and navigation of U.S. systems, resource connections, public benefits, application assistance, and warm referrals to partner organizations. We do also have legal aid for victims of crimes in family law. So we have attorneys that do consultation and representation in family law matters. We provide individual and family counseling for survivors and problem gamblers. We also have in-language peer support groups and healing circles for survivors. And we also provide basic interpretation and translation services, not certified, but just to be able to be that liaison between a community member and a professional interpreter if that is needed. And all of our services are offered in a number of different Asian languages on staff. And then of course we have access to telephonic interpretation or community interpreters as needed. So we speak about 17 different languages on our staff. And then our programs, our community engagement, we have multi-generational family programming. We do community education workshops, including financial literacy, workshops on how to access family resources or healthcare. We also do civic engagement and community organizing, ensuring that our communities have access to their civic rights and understand their civic rights. And we also do youth engagement and leadership development we have 2 programs. One is called Tea Talks and one is called True New Mexico for Youth. And then, like I said, we do policy advocacy and movement building work. So these are just the kinds of things we do and our principles. We are very survivor-centered and trauma-informed in our practices. We center across the organization, regardless of if it's just under our services. We value all of these principles. So centering things around being healing, holistic, family-focused, and rooted in the belief of our communities, and very reflective of communities' needs and ways of healing. And so if you want to take down any of our information, you are welcome to take that down now. We have case managers and community program coordinators available to support if needed. Thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Congresswoman.
Great, thank you so much. And Sachi, I know you mentioned that you guys help provide language access through the Asian Family Center. And for anyone who's listening, could you just give us I know you and I have talked about this previously, but what are some of the main languages that you find people in the community here in Albuquerque are seeking access to information in?
Quite a few, but definitely Mandarin, Chinese, also Vietnamese, and Japanese, Korean, Tagalog, trying to think, Dari and Farsi are kind of the main group that we see the most of, but there's many more as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's also just helpful for the broader community to know some of the specifics about the resources, because you never know when you're going to have a friend or family member or someone in the community that you hear might need help. So please know that the Asian Family Center is really part of the heart of the communities here in central New Mexico and Albuquerque, and provides vital services across the board, not only in language access, but also in helping to connect people in the community to resources. So just really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to turn to the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center to Zoila, did I pronounce it correctly? I'm going to have you say it yourself. Alvarez Hernandez, who's going to teach us about our rights. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. Today, I will be presenting along with my colleague, Jennifer Mendoza. We're both attorneys on the New Mexico Immigrant Rights Children's team. And so we're going to provide you a quick overview of some of the services we provide, and then some ways in which you can assert your rights if you are home.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Mendoza. I'm going to just do a quick overview of our agenda here. We're going to be talking about our services along with couple of quick facts, knowing your rights at home, and how to support communities facing targeted enforcement. Our mission statement here at New Mexico Immigrant Law Center is to advance justice and equity by empowering low-income immigrant communities through collaborative legal services, advocacy, and education. Next slide, please. So this is who we serve. All of our services, I'd like to emphasize, are free. We provide our services to low-income households, and they are statewide. We have 3 offices. Our headquarters are in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have a satellite office here in Santa Fe, which is where I'm located, as well as we opened up a new office this year in Las Cruces. But we do offer services statewide. I have clients and serve clients throughout the whole entire state. We generally focus on humanitarian immigration relief. That means that we do things such as maybe like victim-focused stuff, such as survivor advancement services like U visas and T visas, and VAWAs, which is the Violence Against Women Act petitions. We also focus on asylum and special immigrant juvenile status. That's the department that Zoila and I work in. We're on our children's team here at New Mexico Immigrant Law Center. In addition to that, we also provide citizenship and residency services, DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival services, detention services, and more. We do regularly visit the detention centers and do Know Your Rights presentations there for the detainees. And occasionally we'll take on a couple of their cases if we have capacity to do so. Next slide, please.
Oh, Jennifer, before we go to the next slide, I wonder if we can go back to the previous slide. Perfect. Oh, no, the one we were just on. Thank you. Next one. There we go. One more back. The one about the services. The reason why I wanted to just pause here, and sorry to interrupt your flow, is that especially for anyone who's listening, we want to emphasize that the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center is one of the primary organizations that our office also works with in terms of when we get specific cases where people need to ask follow-up legal questions. And so just really want to emphasize that you guys are one of the premier organizations in the state that really help to provide that direct service. So if you're listening in, you're somebody who has a question about your own status, the status of a family member, and you don't otherwise have connection to an immigration lawyer or know where to turn. This is such an important community resource. So I just really wanted to emphasize that and give people the opportunity to take in all the different services and for people to look at the list. So, okay, back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, so we do have, go ahead.
And along those lines, a lot of times people are concerned about fraud and having a reliable immigration attorney. Although we don't do family-based immigration at NMLC, we have a referral list of attorneys throughout the state that practice and are credible, reliable, experienced. So even if you don't know where to start, please feel free to visit our website or reach out to us.
Thank you, Zoila. So just a couple of quick immigration facts that I'd like the community to know. We have 3 detention centers here in New Mexico. They are located out of Torrance County, Otero County, and Cibola County, and they detain thousands of people there. There's approximately 2,070 people who are in those detention centers, and most of them do not have any criminal history. And the vast majority are seeking asylum. 90% of ICE facilities are run by nonprofit private prisons that contract with local governments in order to run these facilities. And there's a large backlog of cases pending before immigration court and in front of United States Immigration, USCIS, which is the Office of Immigration, which is different than the immigration courts. Because of these high volume, people can sometimes be detained for the duration that these cases are being heard. So that means that people could be in detention for years on end potentially. And next I'll turn it over to Zoila to finish out our presentation.
Thank you. Along those lines, the privatization of immigration is something that our government has significantly expanded over the last 10 years. And it's really important to be cognizant that in a state that is as large as ours, a lot of these facilities are held in remote areas of the state, which means limited access to legal counsel, limited access to visiting family. And it's something we want to make sure that we're mindful about in the way that we support these systems and uphold these systems in the way that they're using our tax dollars for environments that can be potentially problematic. Several of our facilities have had problematic holding conditions, and Congresswoman Stansbury's office has been at the forefront of advocating that work. So it's something that we want to make sure we keep a mindful eye to. It is prison-like conditions in spite of the fact that it is civil detention. As we move through the immigration process, a lot of times people don't necessarily understand how people end up in detention. There are certain requirements. One of the things that we are seeing right now is a shift in immigration policy from providing an individual due process before an immigration judge. That used to be standard. The only time that individuals would qualify for expedited removal was typically if they were within the 100-mile area of the border. That is significantly lesser civil rights for everybody around. And a lot of times individuals that were caught in that area were screened for whether they had been crossed into the United States within the last 2 weeks. And those folks were typically the folks that were put in expedited removal. And now, under the current administration, it has been expanded to individuals who've resided in the United States for less than 2 years. That is a significant expansion as to who expedited removal can apply to, which significantly undermines individuals' due process rights. Going to talk about a little bit about how we as a community can fight back. It's really important to know your rights. It is an American principle to proactively advocate for your rights. The US Constitution applies to every person who is on US soil. It's important that if you are of undocumented status, or even in that in-between process where you are adjusting, that you carry something that demonstrates that you have been here for at least 2 years, so that you can avoid that expedited removal window of 2 years if you qualify. And so sometimes that looks like an ID, rental agreement, or something that demonstrates a medical bill that you've been here for that period of time. If a person has legal status, right now, enforcement is being used indiscriminately. And so it's important that if you have DACA, if you have legal permanent residency, TPS, whatever it might be, if you have that documentation, that you carry it with you.
So just to make sure that we're emphasizing this point, are you recommending that folks who are immigrants, regardless of their status, carry these items with them anytime they're outside their home? Is that what you're recommending?
If they are not US citizens, yes, that is the recommendation as an additional barrier protection.
So put it in your purse or your wallet or something like that.
And if you're not comfortable carrying around the original, you can always carry a copy, but with green card holders, it is recommended that you carry the original green card. One of the things that we want to flag is that families should consider family planning. That doesn't just include a contingency plan around children or minors, but also your finances. There are some resources available and some standard forms that can be used to facilitate that process. I want to get to the meat of it, which is know your rights. If ICE shows up in your home, I want to make sure that you are aware that you have a right to remain silent. You don't have to share any information. You don't have to open the door. We actually encourage you not to open the door. Some folks think, well, I have nothing to hide. That doesn't mean that your civil liberties will not be violated. And so in that vein, you can talk to them through the window. If you have an attorney, everybody has a right to speak to an attorney. So even if you don't have one, you can say, I'd like to speak to an attorney. If you already have one and you are represented by counsel, please provide them the contact information to your counsel so that they can speak directly to your counsel. Don't answer any additional questions. If ICE comes to your home, it's important to teach children not to open the door. I have little ones, and it can be very easy to just think it's UPS or FedEx. It's going to require a little bit of education within our household on safety during this time. This is a slide that's really important right now because of the differences in the kind of warrants that exist. Your home is the safest environment you can possibly be in around asserting your constitutional rights. Unlawful search and seizure is something that is foundational to our US Constitution. And so in order for somebody to be able to enter your home without your consent, they need a judicial warrant. An immigration judge cannot just issue that. ICE cannot just issue that. A detainer and an administrative warrant are not the same thing as a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant is typically involved when there is more of a criminal element and there has been reasonable suspicion established in evidence to be able to have the probable cause to even acquire that. It's really important, if you have time, that you kind of check out the differences. It will have a signature of a US judge. If ICE enters your home and somebody let them in.
A quick follow-up question there, just to make sure people know. So if a federal detention law enforcement person does show up at someone's door and asks to enter, and for example, there's a language barrier, what is the right of the person? Can they ask for a translator? Can they ask for an attorney? What's kind of the steps if someone knocks on the door?
So we do recommend that you talk to them through the window. You do not open the door at all. If there is a language barrier, a lot of times they do have an individual who speaks most commonly Spanish. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad idea to just call somebody who can serve as a translator over the phone with the officer. If you have an attorney, you can even FaceTime your attorney and have that conversation. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to do a little bit of creative advocacy in asserting those rights. And don't be afraid to say, I need a minute. Keep your calm, keep your composure, and take a minute to think and be like, I'll be right with you. I just need to get in contact with somebody who can translate. Or you can opt to not speak to them. If they don't have a warrant, they will not be able to enter your home. And so eventually they will go away. That means they could be there for 5 minutes. That means that they could be there for 45 minutes. We don't know, right? But without a judicial warrant, they are not just going to knock your door down. That won't happen. That might prohibit your ability to be able to go to work on time or school. And so in that regard, that's the part where we want to try to troubleshoot. And it's okay to take a minute to gather yourself and then proceed. Even if it's pulling out a red card of know your rights that might be in your wallet, or calling that really politically activist friend that's always posting on social media about this stuff and being like, hey, something's happening. I don't remember my rights. What is that? Those are some things that we can do. Pull up a YouTube video, pull up this video. We just might have to get a little bit creative, which right now in this point in time, digital advancements allow us to get a little bit more creative.
Great, thank you.
if ICE does enter your home, just know that you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to share any information. It is important that in New Mexico, there is a requirement that you identify yourself to law enforcement by your name, but you are not required to share your information status, your immigration status. In the city of Albuquerque, law enforcement isn't even supposed to ask. That's something that you want to be mindful of. That doesn't necessarily apply to federal law enforcement, but as long as you just state your name, that's all you have to provide. The next thing you can say is, I'd like to speak to a lawyer. And that can be enough. If you, as mentioned before, if you do have any status, a work permit, a green card, have it readily available as a means of identification to try to prevent detention. Never, ever, ever, ever sign anything without a lawyer present. That is your lawyer, not just somebody else's lawyer. That is your lawyer that can read it, review it, and see whether it's in your best interest. You are entitled to record ICE. They don't like it, but it is completely legal. You can absolutely record ICE. They may try to confiscate your phone. If that's the case, make sure that your facial is not available so that they are required to get a warrant in order to get your PIN ID into your phone. And then once the situation settles down and resolves, notify advocacy groups such as us so that we can help share and verify the information. And we're going to move on to closing on some of the things that you can do to get involved. Sorry, love, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. We have a robust pro bono and volunteer program here at New Mexico Immigrant Law Center. If you're interested, you can scan the QR code in the bottom corner here. We do have opportunities for attorneys and for regular folks to help out. We do remote workshops for asylum, remote detention advocacy, remote translation, direct to representation services for attorneys, as well as special immigrant juvenile status. Also, we would like other attorneys to sign up for that as well. Next slide, please. And lastly, right here with this QR code, we have a beautiful community defense manual. There it includes some of the forms that we talked about. For example, the caregiver's affidavit for family planning. Additionally, we have more Know Your Rights information and other really great resources there that are on hand and easy to access. So I recommend that you all scan that QR code and save the website and the files maybe in your bookmarks or something, so that way it's easy to access. And then lastly, we invite you to get in touch with us, as well as in mine's contact information is on this slide as well, in addition to our main office HQ phone number. So thank you all for listening to us today, and we're here to help, so give us a call.
Thank you so much for your time and for having us. Don't feel shy about volunteering with our organization or skipping coffee and donating $5 to the cause. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And before you guys jump back off, I know ACLU is going to go into some additional scenarios and some more Know Your Rights, but since we went so quickly over the contingency planning, I wonder if we could just revisit that for a moment here, because I know a lot of people are feeling afraid and they're not quite sure what to do. Could you just maybe spend a minute or two talking about what kinds of contingency planning recommendations you have for families?
Absolutely. So one of the things we emphasize with our clients is talking about the reality of the situation with your children, something that's at their level that they understand. Maybe explaining that maybe one day mom or dad might not come home, sweetie. So if that happens, call your aunt, call your neighbor, some adult, trusted adult. And we have to have these very hard conversations with the youth sooner rather than later. Part of that also involves if a parent has custody of their child, or maybe they're watching somebody else's kid, is having one of these called a caregiver's affidavit available. With a caregiver's affidavit, it is the caregiver, so a non-parent, who is signing this and then having it notarized. And this gives that non-parent caregiver the authority to take the child to school, to enroll them in any after-school programs, send them to medical care, set up medical appointments, dentist appointments, those types of things. So stuff that generally parents have to be there in order to complete. A caregiver's affidavit does not give the caregiver as much authority as if the parent executed a power of attorney. Now, the difference between the two is that the power of attorney does need the parental consent. A caregiver's affidavit does not. A caregiver's affidavit can be executed there and then and start working immediately, whereas a power of attorney, you need to have that consent of the parent, and it needs their signature as well, which can be difficult if the parent is detained and or deported. So the power of attorney is something that should be completed with the parent prior to incident, if possible. So those are the two main tools that we talk about with our parents here that we help with. Another important thing is to notify the schools of this documentation. You can provide schools or maybe the daycare or medical office a copy of the caregiver's affidavit or the power of attorney. Another thing to keep in mind is that these forms do expire. Generally, the power of attorney can be anywhere from 6 months to a year, and the caregiver's affidavit needs to be renewed every 6 months. So please keep that in mind whenever executing these documents. And those are the more important things about family planning. Another point that Zoila and I talked about too is financial planning as well. Oftentimes it's possible that the head of the household gets detained, but they also happen to be the person who's in charge of the household finances, meaning that maybe they're the only person that's on the bank account. So they're the only ones that can access it. Maybe they're the only person who has access to the utilities. And so then when the head of household maybe gets detained or deported, the second parent is left a bit floundering, having to deal with the emotional fallout from this, take care of their own needs as well, and then having to figure out, well, how do I get access to my partner's bank account? That's how I pay rent, to avoid like maybe an eviction or something like that. So it's important to make sure that all the adults in the household understand how to access these important finances as well.
Great, thank you.
Along with the caregiver's affidavit, it can be done after the individual is not around. But with the power of attorney, if you have the ability to plan, it doesn't kick in until you are unavailable. And so it's not like you're sharing your kid. It only kicks in case of emergency, and there is language in that power of attorney to demonstrate that.
Great, thank you so much. So I think primary takeaways here, and I'll just add a little extra information because I always find it helpful to have things repeated back. And if you're like me, my head's spinning a little bit, taking it all in, and especially if this is something that directly affects you. One, have a plan. Worst case scenario, even though we don't want to think about it, think of a plan and how you're going to make sure that your family's taken care of in all the ways that you would need to do that. Know your rights in terms of if somebody comes to your home, you don't have to allow them in. You don't have to speak to them other than identifying your name if they are a law enforcement, and ask if they have a signed judicial warrant. If they ask for access to your house, it's okay to ask for a moment and to look for some resources before engaging with that person. And also carry with you at all times any documentation you have. And one piece I want to add here, because we end up with a lot of these cases in my office, and it's something that we can help with. If your paperwork is not in order, you can actually call our office. Oftentimes, if you're you lost some piece of immigration paperwork that you had, or you haven't received it yet, we know things end up, in the computer system somewhere in the universe. You can contact our office, especially if it's a federal immigration paperwork, and we can help track that down. So we want you to know that that's something that our office can assist with. So with that, it looks like, Daniel, are you our lead from ACLU today?
Thank you,
Right.
Congresswoman. I am. Thank you so much for inviting us and for having this important opportunity for us to talk about our rights. My name is Daniel Williams. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a policy advocate at the American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico. I think the important disclaimer that I have to make up front is that I'm not an attorney, and I'm definitely not an attorney. And so while I'll be sharing some general legal information today, if you need specific legal advice for your situation, you need to consult an attorney yourself, and every case is different. And so there are often going to be some fact-specific differences in your specific case. And a lot of what I'm going to share is a reiteration of what Zoila and Jennifer shared, because a lot of the rights are the same in some of the circumstances that we're going to be talking about. And so I want to start by talking about what happens if you are pulled over or detained by ICE or really any law enforcement while you're traveling. In general, Zoila talked about the Fourth Amendment and your right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures in your home. You still have those rights, although they're a little bit less powerful when you're in your vehicle. And so you always have the right to stay silent. And in general, that is always going to be advisable. We'll talk about some specific things that you will want to break your silence for. But you always have the right to stay silent. In general, if you're pulled over in your car, it's important to try and stay calm, keep your hands visible. As Zoila mentioned, you do always have the right to record law enforcement as long as you're not impeding their legitimate actions. And they cannot search your car for no reason, but if they have a general reason to believe that a crime has been committed, they are able to search your car. So if they ask to search your car, you don't have to give them consent, and you certainly should withhold that consent, but they might search your car even without your consent if they have that reason to believe that there's something to find there. In general, they can also ask to see your immigration papers if you are not a U.S. citizen. And so, as Zoila mentioned, it's always important to carry documentation with you, and you do have to show those papers in general, especially if you're within 100 miles of the border and you're being detained by ICE. But again, you always have the right to stay silent, even if it's ICE. You always have the right to consult an attorney before speaking to someone, to any law enforcement agency, even if it's ICE. And so those are rights that you can always assert, whether you're at home, in your car, on a bus, 100 miles farther than 100 miles away from the border. Those are rights that you always have, no matter your status, no matter where you are, no matter the circumstance. Then, if some bad things happen in this chain of events and you do end up being detained, I want to talk about what your rights are there as well. Again, you always have the right to stay silent, even if you're detained. So while you're detained, that is not an automatic, now you have to talk to us. You still have that right to stay silent. And you do still have the right to be represented by an attorney and to contact an attorney and family and your consulate. And the detention center should have phone numbers for the consulate there for you to contact them. If the detention center says no, you can't access an attorney, you should call the American Bar Association, and they have a direct code to contact the Bar Association. So this is a really important one to memorize. It's 2150 and then the pound sign. Again, that's a direct line to the American Bar Association hotline if they tell you you're not allowed to access an attorney. And again, that code is 2150 pound sign. As Zoila said, it's important to plan ahead. And so one of the things that we recommend for folks is that it would be, if you are fearful at all of being detained, it's great to establish a relationship with an attorney ahead of time so that you and your family aren't looking to start that relationship once you're already detained. So this is where we love NMILC and we love the referrals that they can give. There's also a database of immigration providers at IMI.org, IMMI.org, and you can find some folks there who are reputable providers. It's much easier to go into detention already knowing who that lawyer that you're going to call, that you're going to ask your family to call is. And similar to what Zoila said about carrying your documentation with you, same thing, you want to be able to access all that documentation, especially any documentation that says that shows that you've been in the country for more than 2 years. So whether that's leases, utility bills, other things that you can show that you've been here for more than 2 years so that you're not going to get caught up in that expedited removal is really important. And so this is one of those cases where you may want not to exercise your right to stay silent. You might want to start telling everyone you can, frankly, I've been here more than 2 years. The other reason you may want to break your silence is if you fear that you will face violence or persecution at home. In that case, tell every agent that you see what your fear is. Because if you don't, it will be much harder to establish your asylum claim later in the process. You should ask if you're eligible for parole or bond. That can be a very complicated process. So that's going to be something that's easier to do if you have an attorney, but that's something that you should always keep in mind to ask and see. And again, just really want to emphasize making that safety plan now, having your phone numbers memorized so that if you do get detained, you know who to call, having the protections on your phone. I 100% agree with Zoila. Take off that Face ID, take off the thumbprint ID, use a passcode. So it'll be much harder for anyone to access your phone in those, if that's the case. Know who to call, know where your documents are, know how to access a lawyer, because I think this is the most important thing. You do have the right to an attorney, and you do have the right to stay silent. I think it's also important to distinguish between immigration detention and criminal detention. So if you're held and charged with a crime, including crimes that are sort of related for immigration, so we're seeing these novel prosecutions of people for allegedly trespassing in this newly created military installation near the southern border. Once they charge you with a crime, then you are entitled to a public defender in many cases, assuming you're otherwise eligible for it. So if you're being held criminally because you've been charged with the crime, then you can ask for a public defender. If you're being held on immigration charges, then you're not entitled to a public defender, but you are still entitled to a lawyer that you hire. And there are, as Zoila and Jennifer said, many options in New Mexico for pro bono or low-cost attorneys. So I think, just to reiterate what I've said and what Zoila and Jennifer said and what the Congresswoman said, I think that the most important things that I want folks to leave here with is make a plan, have your documents, know who to call, know what's going to happen if you're detained, and you always have the right to stay silent, and you always have the right to consult an attorney. So thank you so much, Congresswoman, and thanks for everyone who's here presenting and learning about our rights.
Great. Thank you so much. And actually, we're getting some follow-up questions that would be great. We're going to turn now to El Centro with Rachel Lazar and the El Centro team. But just we'll come back to these, but it might be good for you guys to talk about this. We're getting some questions in the chat about what happens if ICE comes to schools, and what can teachers and schools do to support kids who might be at risk, and also what kind of IDs sort of count as valid IDs, and then also some questions about what happens if people come to a workplace, including on private property. if federal law enforcement comes to a workplace. Okay, it's over to El Centro.
Thank you, Representative Stanbury. Thank you for having us today. Good evening, everybody. My name is Fabiola Landeros. I'm the Civil Rights and Immigration Organizer with El Centro, and with me is Rachel Lazar, our Director, too. We want to talk a little about who El Centro is. El Centro is an immigrant civil, El Centro de Igualdad de Derechos is a local immigrant rights and workers justice organization with over 6,000 members, the majority of whom are low-wage immigrant workers and families. We are proud of the contributions of immigrant families in Albuquerque. Immigrant-friendly is equal to Burga strong. We are essential to the economic, cultural, and civic fiber of our state. Somos esenciales. We are essentials to the economic, cultural, somos esenciales. We are proud that we passed our first immigrant-friendly public safety policy in 2000. And since then, our members have defended and expanded protections over decades. Immigrant leaders and our allies have passed strong policies and practice to ensure that our local law enforcement, Bernalillo County, and city agencies will not aid with ICE deportation programs and Trump's visions of mass deportation. We know that our families and communities are terrified about family separation, and we want to talk directly to you. You're not alone. No están solos. El Centro and our Stroke movement are united and will lean into New Mexico values and will continue to organize to defend and expand immigration protections to keep our families together. We will organize in the streets, at our legislature, at our city council, at our county commission, in the courts, and in election time. We will continue to inform burqueños about their rights. Con la migra, no tenemos que abrir ni la puerta ni la boca. With ICE, we don't have to open our mouths or doors. In the attempt to protect our families, every family, regardless of immigrant status, we deserve to feel safe in the place that we call home. We cannot let Trump to tear down what we have worked so hard to build up, a state in which all Nuevo Mexicanos have the opportunity to thrive.
Thank you, Fabiola. Right now, El Centro, we are going to talk about our rights in the workplace. And like Congresswoman Stansbury said, this is a lot of information. It can be really overwhelming. We know that when we're in crisis, we're not necessarily going to remember the 4th and 5th Amendment. But as Fabiola already mentioned, our lema, our tagline at El Centro is, con la migra no tenemos que abrir ni la puerta ni la boca. So again, with immigration, we do not need to open our mouths or the door. I'm going to talk a little bit about, for any of the business owners there, how to protect their work site, because protecting our work site is protecting our business, but it also means protecting workers, right? So here are some tips of proactive things we can do before there is any ICE activity. We can create a company and organization-wide plan in advance to how to respond to ICE activity. And that means appointing a person, one per shift, who will know how to respond. We anticipate different types of ICE activity, right? That can be an I-9 audit, right? That's when they go through the I-9 paperwork. They can be looking for an individual, right? It can be a raid. And not in the workplace, but we've also been hearing about detentions taking place when people do their check-ins with ICE, okay? Before ICE activity takes place, business owners can also make sure that they have legal counsel, okay? They can also, and one of the easiest ways to protect our work site is to clearly mark public versus private spaces. That means literally we can just put up a sign that says private or employees only, okay? The management should understand your plan, okay? So, and my colleagues from other organizations talked about this, but ICE needs a search warrant. That's signed by a judge. They also could get the permission of the owner or designated supervisor, but we do not have to give permission, right? Because we want to protect our business, protect our workers, okay? Or if there's probable cause, and all that means is if ICE comes in and people start running or something, that could lead to someone getting arrested, okay? An arrest warrant, an ICE detainer, or a final order of removal are not sufficient. So the question is, a lot of us don't know the difference between all of these warrants. And sometimes, and Congresswoman Stansbury brought this up, that sometimes it's in a second language and we're feeling some panic. So at El Centro, that is where we say we do not have to give permission, right? And we can absolutely remain silent, okay? In general, ICE is not carrying judicial warrants. The way we know if they have a judicial warrant or not is they're going to enter by force, okay, or enter without our permission. Okay, so if approached by an ICE officer, if approached by an ICE officer at a work site or private space, workers can say something simple like, I can't give you permission to enter, or you must speak with my employer or supervisor, okay? So that's really easy. People can continue to work, okay, and say, I cannot give you permission. You need to talk to my supervisor, which means supervisors need to be trained. Okay, if you have ICE activity at your workplace, your point person can clearly or has the right to clearly tell ICE that they don't have permission to enter private spaces. Okay, you can also ask officers for their names, badge numbers, and for whom they work. That's really important because we have been hearing that ICE can be oftentimes in plain clothes, meaning that they don't have a badge on or they don't have a uniform, right? So we should be asking those questions about it when someone comes into our workplace. Who are you? Can I have your name? Can I have your badge number? You can also take note of color of uniforms and logos, and then document. And as Soila said, someone can also film what's happening on their cell phone, but understand if you impede, that can also have consequences. Okay, we can also identify any workers who've been detained, right? And if we have their names, which we do if there are employees, right? Their date of birth and their what's called an A number, that makes it easier to find people. Tips after, okay? We can make referrals to attorneys, right? You can call organizations like New Mexico Immigrant Law Center or Centro de Igualdad y Derechos for referrals as to how to help your employees, okay? You can give Know Your Rights information to the rest of your employees. You can also give Know Your Rights information to their family members. Okay, you can raise money so the impacted family can explore posting bond, and you can also explore social pressure. And we have a great line of communication with our members of Congress, including Congresswoman Stansbury. We're very appreciative for that. And so business owners and others can call organizations like El Centro, and we can see if it makes sense, or talk with the family to see if any kind of public social pressure would make a difference. Okay, obviously, we all need to be supporting state and local initiatives to extend additional protections. Immigrants have been at the forefront of fighting for immigrant protections at the state level and here locally. We're incredibly proud of that, right? But we need to expand those protections, and we're only going to do that if we stay unified and we continue to organize. Another reminder to the workers out there and to business owners, you have workers' rights and protections. And so even if you are detained, that last paycheck might be essential for your family, because we know that detentions plunge our families further into poverty. And so you have rights, and your employers have to pay those last paychecks, or if they have a policy to pay out paid time off, that also needs to be respected. And we do orientations at El Centro every 2 weeks in Spanish for workers, and impacted families can call El Centro to support with referrals to attorneys about their workers' rights and referrals for direct services as well. Okay, Fabiola, now we've talked about work site protections, and Fabiola is going to go summarize again those rights directly for workers in the workplace.
Okay, so what I can do if ICE come to my work? If veterans come into my workplace, I have the right to keep on working and not answer their questions. I can tell them that I'm busy and I cannot speak to them. I don't have to divulge my nationality or my immigration status. ICE cannot enter private areas in our workplace without search warrant, permission from owner or designated supervisor, or probable cause that something illegal is happening, like someone fleeing or hiding as the way that they maybe or they will try to enter our workplace.
Thank you, Fabiola. And I'm going to put the Spanish slide on for a second so our the community can see in Spanish or take a screenshot. And all of this information is available on El Centro's website and on our social media, such as Facebook as well. And we're just going to reassert. Fabiola, if you want to go over again our Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights.
Of course, and like Rachel said, I've been doing this Know Your Rights workshop for the past almost 11 years, and I cannot remember what is the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment, but I can remember this. Con la migra, no tenemos que abrir ni la puerta ni la boca. With ICE agents, we don't have to open our mouth or the door or let them into our private spaces.
Okay, and just in summary, in our workplaces, right? And I'll give an example. So if I work at a restaurant, for example, the dining area is public. So ICE can enter those public spaces, right? Such as a dining room, but not the kitchen, not a private employee bathroom, not offices, but to make that very clear, right? We can put signage up. We should have management and supervisors ready to deny access and to say, we do not have to let you into our establishment without a search warrant. Workers have the right to say, I will not answer your questions. And just to remind ourselves, when we're talking about remaining silent, even saying where we are from, then I have to prove that I'm in the country legally. But if I absolutely remain silent, right, then it's their burden. And for many, many, many undocumented folks, immigration does not have their information. And so there is power in remaining silent, in not saying we're divulging our country of origin, our immigration status. And in all cases, we absolutely have the right to remain silent. And we're going to leave it here so that the public has some time to ask some questions. And thank you so much, Congresswoman Stansbury. We are so proud of your strong positions to support and protect our community. And we know we have a champion in Washington, D.C., really fighting for Burqueño families. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you guys. One of the questions that we got was about residents outside of Albuquerque. And I know Rachel and Fabiola, you guys are here in Albuquerque, but can you give us a little bit of the flavor for what does the kind of immigrant rights and local network look like statewide, or should they call you guys if people have questions and they're outside the city?
Absolutely. And so this is exactly why we're fighting for statewide protections, because all New Mexicans deserve the same protections regardless of where we live. This is why we need more people to join the movement, right? So that we can pass. We're going to continue to fight for statewide protections. There are other organizations. So for communities outside of Albuquerque, you can contact Somos un Pueblo Unido, right? There are other organizations in southern New Mexico, such as NM Cafe, and they have expertise on what our rights are in border communities, especially given with the militarization going on right now in border communities. If you do not know if protections are in your county, feel free to call El Centro and we will put you in touch with the right local organizations in your community. and they can reach us at 505-246-1627, and you can also find us on Facebook.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll put some of this information also online and circulate it through our office. But again, we just want to reiterate, there's no wrong door to come through. All of us work together. So if you have questions and you live anywhere in the state of New Mexico, please just contact us and we will help connect you with the right resources. A question that we're getting a lot, and I think is on a lot of people's minds, I think would probably be a good question for the Immigrant Law Center, is what to do if you have an appointment with federal law enforcement or with USCIS or with ICE. We know that we saw obviously over even the last few days that ICE agents were arresting people outside of their appointments. What recommendations do you have, and what steps should folks take if they're in that situation, both preparing for and if something happens?
Let my colleague chime in if she has any particular thoughts, but
Sure.
one of the most important parts of this is some of the policies and actions are actually undermining the due process and people feeling comfortable to show up to court. The law is the law, and we always want to ensure that we follow that. All we can do is advise as to the different options. And so some of the things that we have encountered are things like showing up to your ICE check-in. You can always encourage finding legal counsel to accompany you or a legal observer. This is one of those moments where having a quick consultation with an attorney, they could charge you $50 to $100 to $150 for a 1-hour consultation, and just knowing where you lay in that spectrum is helpful, as well as having that emergency planning part. Do you want to speak to immigration court?
Sure. So we generally try to have an attorney accompaniment with our clients if they have an order of removal already. I've gone to biometrics appointments for asylum claims and accompanied clients there. I've gone to USCIS in Lubbock to accompany clients there as well. Generally, there hasn't been any issues, and also generally those types of appointments aren't supposed to be points of location for removal enforcement, but we can see that they have been. So the reality is that if you're having to go to these check-ins and stuff and you already have a removal order, it gets important to have that conversation with your family about contingency planning. And it's sad that we really can't give any better answer, but that's the truth. That's part of why we're here to help, is to tell people the truth, even if it's hard to digest at times.
Thank you. And while we have you on, another question that we got is about what kind of identification to carry. I know you guys talked about some of the documentation to carry, but like, what is considered the best form of identification to carry? Is it a driver's license, a real ID? Does it matter? And then we also got a question, if you are an American citizen fully, but are just concerned that you might be racially profiled, for example, is there documentation that you recommend people carry in general?
Certainly. Well, if you're an American citizen, ICE does not have the authority to detain you, but that does not mean that they won't racially profile you and sweep you up. There's been a couple of cases of that happening lately. I would recommend having a copy of your passport on you, not necessarily the original, because you don't want to lose that. A real ID can also count too, because in order to get that, you either have to show a passport or a social security number. And those are two items that only citizens can have. Along with that, I would just suggest a valid photo ID for kids who are Under 14, that could mean a school ID. Those are generally accepted as well. Probably those would be the best ones. And maybe even a copy of a passport from your home country. But I wouldn't recommend having some of those original documents on you, but copies of them should suffice.
Great.
I'd also like to flag that I used to work at the ACLU. So there's part of me that it's like, no, you don't have to carry anything. You are a US citizen. They have no jurisdiction over you. But I think it's a personal decision made on a case-by-case basis as to what kind of risk and even privilege you have in order to be able to assert. Because it is the type of thing that you could then turn around and file a lawsuit. Often, you barely even recover the legal fees for the situation, and that's even if you can find somebody to take your case. It sort of depends on how much of a battle you want to put up in asserting your right to not have to carry that kind of documentation, because ICE does not have jurisdiction over you, especially if you are outside of that 100 border zone. But I think that's a personal decision. The real ID is sufficient, but again, you could be temporarily detained. One of the strengths of our state is that we have the New Mexico Civil Rights Act. While that may not necessarily intersect with law enforcement for ICE or CBP in the way that we would ideally want, if there is local law enforcement cooperating with ICE, then you can. Because then local law enforcement isn't required to enforce federal immigration laws. And if there is any kind of false imprisonment, pretextual stop, like not putting your blinker on, and then all of a sudden that stop is stretched out 30, 40 minutes, even 20 minutes, so that Border Patrol can come by and do an ICE check-in, or a Border Patrol immigration check, then your constitutional rights are being violated. And in New Mexico, the New Mexico Civil Rights Act provides you additional protections. But that has to involve like a state agency. And so just something to keep in mind, it's a personal choice. It's a personal choice as to the battle that you want to have. As a brown woman of color, even though I am a US citizen and a lawyer, I carry my real ID on me at all times.
Thank you for that. And I know we got a question that got answered in the chat, but just in case for anyone that didn't get the opportunity to read it, it looks like the answer is similar to the discussion around workplaces, but could you guys weigh in on what are student rights in the schools, and what are the responsibilities of teachers and administrators at our public schools or even private schools if ICE or somebody shows up?
Would you like us to answer that, Congresswoman? I don't know who you were directing that question to.
Both.
Rachel, given your background,
Yeah.
you can go first and I can pigtail whatever on the back end.
Okay, and so as a result of amazing organizing and local immigrant leaders, the Albuquerque Public School Department actually has very strong safe school zone policies. And it is very clear that they cannot share data, for example, that ICE would need a judicial warrant, that they are not aiding in the enforcement of federal immigration law. Our teachers unions, our educators are really, really dedicated to provide safe schools, right? And then as individuals, if we are parents, that is when we have to remember that we have rights. And so if any ICE activity takes place around or near schools, that is when we can assert our right to remain silent, to not divulge our immigration status. And, you know, yeah, so I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. The Trump administration reversed what was called the sensitive locations memo. But we continue locally to fight to ensure, right, that people feel safe sending their children to school.
And along those lines, I think my colleague and I had earlier had a conversation about how does that apply to other areas. Rachel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Bernalillo County also has a immigrant-friendly policy. Is that still in place? We have had incidents where we've had to have conversations with the county as to the enforcement of that, but that was several years back, and for the most part, it is honored, it is respected, and you just don't ask. That's not federal law enforcement, is not your job, it's not your role. And a lot of that advocacy has been from on the ground organizers like Rachel and El Centro. However, that doesn't mean that applies throughout the state. So it's not a bad idea to reach out to your school or your school board and ask, what is your policy on this matter? To get an understanding of how they would react. Do they have a safety plan or even an action plan, sort of the way that Rachel explained on an I-9 worksite or any kind of ICE enforcement action at a worksite? Is there somebody who is trained and knows what to do? And then lastly, our state attorney general came out with a great resource as to how you can navigate those circumstances in different institutions throughout college, school, hospitals. That is a great resource, and a link was included.
Great. And there was also a question in the chat about just getting access to resources in general and in Spanish. And so, yes, we'll make sure that all of this is available in different places and spaces, and that there are translated versions available as well. But also want to encourage folks again to use the resources that are already out there. Both the city and El Centro and the Immigrant Law Center and ACLU all have resources on their websites. And also, if they are not in a language that you need, we can work, for example, with the Asian Family Center of the city to help with language access and translation. So let us know about that. I think the final question that we have time for before we close out here and kind of sum things up is we have a number of people asking basically questions about what's situational awareness here in New Mexico. And, you know, I know one of the things that we've all talked about in this group is we want to make sure that people in our community are empowered, they have knowledge, they know what's going on, they're prepared. But also we don't want to stoke fear unnecessarily, because there's always lots of rumors going around, and there's also scary things actually happening. So I'm wondering if somebody can kind of give us your summary of what you're seeing and hearing in the community in terms of enforcement, what it looks like in Albuquerque and New Mexico, and what to expect maybe in the coming weeks and months. If anyone feels prepared to answer that question.
I think I can talk a little bit about what we've been hearing. In the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing operations done by immigration where they're being looking for a person in a specific, but that's not going to stop them from interrogate and detain other people that is around. That's what we call sweeps sometimes. We've been seeing they're looking in a specific for someone, but they're being detaining other people. What is scary about this is they're focusing on people that doesn't have right now sometimes ties to the city, to the country, so it's easy for them to target our community. But also we see there is a lot of resilience in our communities passing information. Mostly we been in communication with the Mexican consulate when it's people from Mexico. They can help us to find the person. The only raid that we've been here and confirmed right now is the one that happened far from here in Lovington, New Mexico, where 11 people were detained. But raids here in Albuquerque, we're not seeing yet. We hope that with our immigrant-friendly policies and people knowing what their rights are, we can try to minimize the detentions here in Albuquerque, but we know that they are focusing and targeting communities where we don't have these type of protections for our families.
That's right. And that is exactly why Know Your Rights information is so important. And the idea is not, we're not sending a message to people to isolate, right? The more you're connected with community-based organizations, the more support we feel, right? Because telling people not to open their mouth or the door can be isolating. But when it comes to immigration, right, whether or not we are in the streets, at home, in the workplace, that is why asserting those rights are so important. And then we encourage people to engage with organizations like El Centro. And again, if you are outside of Bernalillo County in Albuquerque, we're happy to put you in contact with your local immigrant rights organizations.
Great. Does anyone else have anything to add about the current state of affairs? If not, we'll do just a quick round robin at the end to close everything out. I know we did get a question about detention as well. And let me just say, we do have one private detention center in New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. That is the Torrance facility. A question was asked about our office and whether or not we had toured that facility. The answer is yes. I personally have been there. I actually just met with the Inspector General for DHS 2 weeks ago to talk about Torrance and follow-up and compliance. What we are hearing in terms of detention in New Mexico is that there are a number of people who have been arrested through enforcement actions in other places who have been moved into detention here in New Mexico. Over the last several years, those facilities were largely used to house asylees. And, I want to emphasize, these are not people who've committed crimes. These are people who are here pursuing their legal right to asylum. And there are stipulations in federal law and appropriations that require bedding of asylees. And there was a decision made during the first Trump administration to allow private prisons to have those contracts. I personally believe that is un-American. If you have a legal right to be here and you have a legal right as an American on your pathway to citizenship, you should not be detained in jail. That's just un-American. And that's why I have been advocating alongside more than 150 members of Congress to shut down private detention contracts, because they, I believe, are an abuse of our American civil liberties and your rights as an immigrant. So that's that. And we know that part of the administration's plan and what they're pursuing in the reconciliation bill is billions of dollars and more funding for detention and for enforcement. And so that is part of why, in addition to all the other things that we're fighting in that reconciliation bill, including cuts to health care and food assistance and education, we're pushing back against these abuses of our civil liberties as well. So I just want to close things out, kind of bring it all back in, finish out the conversation, and just reiterate that if you're living in New Mexico, if you're feeling afraid right now, the most powerful thing you can do right now is to know your rights and make a plan. And I hope that this has helped, at least in some small way, help folks out there wrap their minds around what that might look like. Regardless of what your status is, if you're concerned, you might want to come up with a very concrete plan for if the worst case scenario happens. Make sure you're carrying documentation on you. If you've lost your documentation, contact my office. It sounds like part of the recommendation is that you might want to reach out to the Immigrant Law Center or a private attorney if you're concerned about what might happen if you do interact with immigration enforcement officials. If you have a family, getting your financial affairs and power of attorney and affidavits in order around childcare. Making sure you've made contact with an attorney or someone in the legal community just to make sure that you've got things in order. Make sure that when you leave home, if you're concerned about your safety, that you're always carrying your ID and carrying emergency contact information, as well as contact information for an attorney. But if you do end up in detention, you have a right to make a phone call, and you also have a right to remain silent. That is an American right, and you have constitutional rights. Also making a plan if you either have kids in school, to talk to the school, or you're a teacher or somebody who works in the schools, to come up with an explicit plan regarding how to handle situations where families might be impacted, and also knowing your rights as a school in whatever jurisdiction you're working. Workplaces, also wonderful recommendations about your rights and also your responsibilities as an employer, and what you can do inside a workplace to help organize. And also, I think, just for your own personal self, don't panic. Make sure that you've got a plan, you've got everything in order. And if something happens, carry the phone numbers for all these organizations in your wallet, and we're here for you as well. And so I want to just do a quick round robin. Why don't we start with Zoila, since you have your hand up, and then we'll go to each of the Hollywood squares before we close out. Go ahead.
Just wanted to name, the founding fathers loved us so much. The US Constitution, it is the perfect will to leave your children of future Americans. The State Bar of New Mexico has free constitutions, little booklets that you can carry around. You're welcome to come in. It's open to the public. Grab one, take it. You could Google it. It is truly an act of true patriotism to understand our Constitution and stand up for our Constitution, which applies to everybody. It is important to not consent in advance, assert your rights, and then you can troubleshoot from there as things evolve. It is one of the best forms of protest that you can enforce during this time, is don't consent prematurely.
And I'm just going to double down on that, because we're coming up on 4th of July, which celebrates our Declaration of Independence. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, they actually address many of the things that we're talking about here, because this is a nation whose founding documents were written by immigrants and the children of immigrants. And that is written into the fabric of our country. Daniel, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you everyone for being here. As Zoila said, as we're all saying, the easiest way for folks to violate your rights is if you don't know them. And so it's important to be safe. It's important to take precautions, do everything you can to protect yourself and to protect the people that you love, and also know your rights and know the rights of the people that you love, so that you can stand up for yourself in your community. And I know that every organization that was on this call today loves being out in community. And so if you would like any of us to come into another space that you're in and share some of the same information, I know, certainly speaking for the ACLU, and I'm 90% sure that the same can be said for NMILC and El Centro, we'd love to come share the same information with other groups as well.
Great, thank you. Rachel and Fabiola?
Thank you, Representante. And I'm going to talk to the impacted community, so I'm going to do it in Spanish. So, no estamos solos, somos muchos los que estamos aquí para defender a nuestras familias. Si tienen dudas, si tienen preguntas o quieren un taller completo de Conoce tus derechos, siempre pueden comunicarse con nosotros, pero es siempre recordar ese mensaje de no aislarnos, de estar juntos, estar unidos y continuar creciendo este movimiento que está hecho para proteger a nuestras familias y asegurarnos que todo lo que hemos creado aquí en Albuquerque, en el estado de Nuevo México, siga prosperando, porque no vamos a permitir que Trump destruya todo lo que nuestras familias han conseguido durante los años. Gracias. Thank you.
Rachel, do you want to add?
Fabiola did an amazing job. She was just talking about the fact that we have a strong movement in New Mexico that this is not the time to isolate ourselves. We need to feel like we're in community. For any community out there that needs a complete Know Your Rights workshop, we do skits and scenarios, and people can practice in their own language. So if anyone needs that kind of support, and that we have a strong movement and we're going to keep fighting, and we cannot allow the Trump administration to destroy what we have spent decades building up in New Mexico, which is an Albuquerque, which is a state in which everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you. And one thing I'll just add, having worked with El Centro, is they're not only a resource in the community, they're organizers in the community. And if you're interested in getting more involved in not just working with the community, but advocating for immigrants' rights policy, El Centro and allied organizations have really helped to advance many of the state and local policies that are helping our community thrive. So get involved. Not only don't be scared, get involved. All right, Sachi, I see you've brought yourself out. Please, let's go.
Yeah, I'll just briefly, I know we're over time, so just wanted to say thank you for having us, and just a reminder that we are here for the Asian community, and if you or someone you know needs that support, we're here for you, and we're all working really closely together with one another in this group. So like the Congresswoman said, like we'll get the resources we need to the people who need them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Beatriz and Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you so much. First, I want to thank again Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury and her team. I think in Albuquerque, we live the spirit of one Albuquerque in a way that we want to work with everyone. I think we also had to extend it that one New Mexico, and believe that unity is what is going to bring us to have that strength to overcome the situations that happen. I just want to mention one thing that is very important, is that misinformation could be very dangerous. So we always had to double check the information that is out there to don't bring so much panic in our community, but by itself, by double checking the information, create a sense of peace and belonging. And I also want to thank Mayor Keller for being so supportive all these years and continue to do so for the immigrant and refugee community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jennifer, if you're still able to, there you go.
Definitely. I just want to help frame everything and ground everything here at the end. If we think about the history of our nation, it's gone through worse things. So just know and have faith that this too shall pass. We're in this together. And if you ever need me or my colleague or anything from New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, we're happy to show up. We're happy to do more presentations at whatever location you need. We're happy to facilitate all of those things. So thank you for inviting us to speak today, Representative.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off today, but I don't know about all of you, but I know for me, it's helped my shoulders settle in and feel a little bit more at ease, just knowing what the community and rights of our community look like and how people can prepare. So I hope that you got a little bit of comfort from this webinar. Know that our office is here to support you. Know that this entire community is here to support you. You belong. You deserve to be safe. We're fighting for you, and we do love you. So with that, we're going to sign off. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll send out more information. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.